Hello. So tonight's story, which comes from Wales, is it's borderline whether it's a monster story or not. It's about a creature that's kind of like a boggart or a brownie or a hobgoblin, something like that. It's called the Bwaka. I think it's a great story, obviously, or I wouldn't tell it. It's from this book. Which is Weird Tales from the Storyteller, collected by a storyteller called Daniel Morden. Met him when I went to Festival at the Edge one year. He's a really good storyteller, really lovely bloke as well. Hope you enjoy it. It's a lot of fun. An old farmer and his wife lived on a hill just outside of a town, and they had no children, no matter how hard they tried. And as the years went by, they found it harder and harder to run the farm, until one day they went into market, went to the place where people stand where they need a job. And there they found a young boy, Owen. So they took him back to the farm. Within a week, they wondered how they had ever managed without him. He didn't say much, but he could turn his hand to almost anything. And one winter's night, the snow was coming down. Owen decided he would go out onto the hill and check on the sheep. Put on his boots, his coat, his hat, his scarf, his gloves. Pushed on the kitchen door against the snowdrift and went out into the blizzard. The farmer and his wife sat by the fire, waiting for him to return. And they waited, they waited, they waited all night. The next morning, they put on their boots, their coats, their scarves, their hats and gloves. They set out through the snow to find Owen. Find him they did, near the woods. It seemed that maybe he'd got tired in the cold and lain down to rest. And he hadn't got back up. The old farmer and his wife were heartbroken. The night of the funeral, of Owen's funeral, they lay in bed mourning him. They heard a strange noise out in the farmyard. A scraping, scratching sound. They were far too scared to look out the window as to what it might be. The next morning, they pushed against the kitchen door, expecting to have to shove against the snow, but it opened with ease. The farmyard was completely clear of snow. The scraping, scratching they had heard in the night had been someone shoveling the snow clear of the farm. The next night they were woken by an almighty hammering. In the morning all the holes in the barn had been patched up. The next morning when they woke up, a fence they'd always wanted to build but never found the time or the money had been constructed all the way around the farmyard. Well, the two of them went into the town to see the cunning man, see if he knew what was going on. They told him of Owen and what had happened, and how the farmyard had been cleared of snow, how the holes had been mended in the barn roof, and how the fence had been built. Well, the cunning man, the wise old man, he sat there, sucked on his teeth. He said, "When I was young, I saw a Bwaka in the woods behind your farmhouse. I reckon that's what it is." A Bwaka? What's a Bwaka? What? Kind of a shapeshifter. Take any form it wants, turn invisible. But it its normal form is somewhere between that of an old man and a child. It's a funny hairy thing. Long, thin, pointed ears, snout like a pig. Yeah, but Bwaka was old when the earth was young. But why is he doing this for us? I reckon the Bwaka saw what happened to poor Owen and he feels sorry for you, so it's helping out around the farm to make up what happened. If a Bwaka likes you, it'd be a great service. But if a Bwaka doesn't like you, the old man shook his head. That's when there's trouble. So the farmer and his wife went back home. And that night, the farmer's wife decided that if it was a Bwaka, they should really thank it properly. So she took a big wooden bowl, filled it with cream, went out into the farmyard, over to the barn, put the bowl of cream down, said, "Bwaka, thank you for what you've done for us." In the shadows of the barn, something shuffled. Well, farmer's wife wasn't hanging around to see what it was. She shot back across the farmyard, slammed the door. But in the morning, the bowl was empty. The cows had been milked. So that was it from then on. Each night they would leave a bowl of cream out for the Bwaka to thank him. And the Bwaka carried on working for them. Would shear the sheep, would plough the fields, would harvest for them. Oh, and if you visited that farmhouse, you'd find meat hanging from the rafters, drying, ready for market. There were huge cheeses. There were always fresh milk ready. For the first time in their lives, the farmer and his wife had full pockets, money to spare. So they decided that they would take on a maid. One morning when they went to market, they went back to the area where people stood if they needed a job, and there was a pretty young girl there by the name of Ewan. So decided to take her on. Their first job that night was to take out the bowl of cream for the Bwaka. Well, the farmer's wife explained what she needed to do, so she stepped out, and as soon as the kitchen door had shut behind her and she was out in the farmyard, no one could see her. Bwaka, who believed in such things? She lifted the wooden bowl to her lips, drank the milk herself. She filled it with water from a puddle, went out to the barn, laid it down, smiled sweetly. "Thank you, Bwaka, for all you do for us." She turned, skipped back across the farmyard to the house. Well, that night the farmer and his wife lay awake. There was silence. Normally they were lulled to sleep by the sound of the Bwaka working. So they went to Eowyn's room, woke her. She got quite a fright when she saw the farmer and his wife staring down at her. Did you do it? Did you leave the bowl of cream for the Bwaka?" "Oh, of course, yes." She rolled over and tried to get back to sleep. She didn't rest well that night. None of them did. In the morning, the farmer and his wife wandered the farmyard. Didn't seem anything had been done. But in the barn, they found the wooden bowl smashed into pieces. For a week, there was no sign of the Bwaka. But when it did return, They remembered what the cunning man had said. If a Bwaka liked you, it would help you. But if it didn't like you, if you had upset the Bwaka, then there would be trouble. Well, they dug a hole, the Bwaka would fill it in. They ploughed a field. Next morning, the grass would have grown long overnight. They built a fence, he'd tear it down. They couldn't keep the farm hands, they were too scared. If they fixed holes in the barn roof, it'd be torn open again overnight. No one would stay and work for them for all those strange happenings. And then one night, invisible hands grabbed Eowyn, dragged her out of her room down the stairs, started throwing her over the farmyard, over the farmhouse, until eventually she ended up in the duck pond. Shivering, bruised and terrified, she went back to bed. The next morning she woke up not in her bed, but suspended on a plank over the well, the bucket hanging above her. She screamed in fright and ran away, never to be seen again. And so it went on. Bags of seed would be split open. The sheep would mysteriously die. The cows stopped giving milk. They tried to get other work, but no one stayed at that farm for very long. Well, absolutely desperate, the farmer and his wife called for the minister to come to see if he could pray the Bwaka away. They took his horse. While they fed and watered it, the minister went into the farmhouse, set a stool by the fireplace, rested his elbows on it and down to pray. And as he was muttering away, the stool was whipped from under him. He went down, cracked his face on the flagstone in front of the fireplace. When he looked up, his nose bleeding, to his amazement, standing over him, it was like looking into a mirror. An exact copy, an image of him stood over him, grinning down, right down to the Bible he carried by his side. Well, he ran from that farmhouse absolutely screaming. The farmer and his wife watched him go, leapt onto his horse, galloped away. Nothing could tempt him to come back. And then one night, the farmer and his wife were woken by the sound of the kitchen door opening. Listen, it's in the house. What a noise there was! They were both too terrified to go down to see what was happening. The next morning when they opened the kitchen door, pots and pans being strewn everywhere. Cups and saucers smashed, windows broken, doors torn off their hinges. The meat that usually hung in the rafters drying on the floor, buzzing with flies, crawling with maggots. The cheeses that were ready to sell at market were covered in a horrible mould. The milk had soured. There was nothing they could salvage. Well, the farmer turned to his wife. This place is cursed. It's not worth staying here. We'll have to leave. We'll go somewhere else. Start again. So they gathered quickly what belongings they could. Clothes, the furniture that hadn't been smashed, a spinning wheel, threw it in the back of a cart, harnessed it up to the horses, and away they went. And as they were leaving, they passed a neighbour. "Where are you off to?" "Anywhere," said the farmer. "Anywhere's better than here. We need to find somewhere else." "Oh, well, all right. Goodbye." The neighbour waved to them, and off they went, the neighbour watching them. And from the back of the cart, out popped a very strange creature. Hairy, long thin ears, smelt like a pig. It looked at the neighbour, it smiled, and it waved and mouthed